Hello and welcome to the video that is going to be all around changing nappies. I know you guys are super keen to hear about poo, nappies specifically, so I'm going to be doing that. If you're new here, I'm Alina Ghost. I do lots of videos around mum stuff, so reusable nappies is my thing. I'm also going through a whole redecoration process with the house, and the reason I haven't been on here doing these kinds of videos for such a long time is because I had bare walls. I've taken down wallpaper and that's taken me months basically to start priming it. We're halfway there, I still need to paint it and things like that. Make sure to catch that in the makeovers that I do very soon. I want to say a huge thank you to you, my viewers, because without you I would not be doing this video. I am super keen to be sharing this one with you, and don't worry, I'll be back very soon as well, because I know you want to see specifically how it works when you're out and about, so I'll definitely be back with that and lots of tips around that one. However, before we start this video, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up, it goes a long way, and if you have any questions or recommendations on videos, please do write it in the comments down below. So let's get to it. I'm a mum and I don't have any formal education as to how these things work, so what I'm going to be sharing with you today is simply what I've learned in the last 2.5 years since my toddler was born, and since we've been doing reusable nappies for just around 2 and a bit years. I can't believe how quickly it has gone, and I can't believe how long we've been using these reusable nappies, and I'm so happy with them, and I can't wait to share my knowledge with you guys. First things first is that I find that the way you change a nappy very much changes as your baby develops. In the early stages, your baby is very much likely to have liquid poos because they're breastfeeding, formula feeding, so it means that it's very liquidy, very runny, and it's not like the poos that we adults get, which are a lot more solid and harder. So these things probably change when they start eating more solid foods. I guess I've noticed that his poos were a lot more solid around that 1 year of age, when we completely stopped breastfeeding and he was just eating solid foods for breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks and things like that. So basically when there's a routine of like solid foods, that's when you can expect solid poopies. However, I did a video on like diarrhea. My son got diarrhea from nursery and he had it for about 6 weeks, no joke. I was ready to take him to the doctors and A&E, but actually it turned out to be normal after speaking to the nursery and everything, that it was just a bug that went round. However, I did a video on that, that's what I was trying to say, and if you actually want to see how that worked during that time, so he was 1.5 years, if not a little bit older, and basically the poo was coming out very liquidy even for his age, because it was diarrhea, so it wasn't normal. And yeah, check out that video if you want to have a look at more, especially if we're talking about poo. Diarrhea is definitely something that comes with the program. I wanted to go through some tips before we start with the step-by-step, and that is because these things are going to make your life so much easier. So firstly, I definitely recommend that you change your baby as soon as you know that they are have pooed, and we'll go through that first step as to how to have a look, how to smell, how to see that they have pooed indeed. This prevents any rashes, it also keeps them from being uncomfortable, and it makes sure that they don't actually leak on any of the outfits, your furniture and carpets and things like that. The next thing is, especially when they're little, make sure that you take their socks off as well as their actual like baby grows, and that is because they're very much likely to pull their feet up and wriggle around, and then a lot of the time you find that when you're trying to actually change them, they stick their foot into the pooey nappy. So yeah, definitely recommend that you take socks off as well as everything else. I've learnt very early on, because my son is definitely a mover. He was even super wriggly in my stomach when I was pregnant. What I'm trying to say is basically you need to figure out how you can change on the go. Practice putting those nappies on the move. I definitely wouldn't have lived without it, so I definitely recommend that you do that very soon, and it's definitely a skill to have that is very, very handy, especially when they start running, zooming, climbing and doing everything that toddlers do. A good tip for babies is actually keeping them safe and making sure that when they are rolling over and when you are changing them, that they can't fall anywhere. I actually had, I think it was my mum-in-law's friend who said that when her kids were young, basically one of them managed to fall into the dustbin head first because they rolled off of the changing mat, which is hilarious but at the same time very dangerous. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye out on the environment that you're placing them when you are changing their nappy. One last thing before we start, and that is we are currently potty training. So I've got potty training on the mind. Yes, it's sad to be leaving reusable nappies, but at the same time I feel like we've done that for 2 years now. He's now definitely ready to move on and take that next step. But I wanted just to give you a tip to say that I would recommend showing them how to be more independent. So show them how to actually take off their clothes, so their trousers. You can encourage the child to take them off themselves just to improve that independency. But finally, I'd definitely recommend actually trying and encourage them to wipe themselves, or at least understand the concept of wiping themselves. Okay, so after that super duper long introduction, which I hope was very helpful, let's get into the steps how to change a diaper when the child has pooed into it. Step 1. So step 1 is all about finding out if they've actually pooed. Have they soiled themselves? Have they weed into the nappies? So how do you check that? Firstly, what I would do, because I have a son, I would always check the front of the nappy to see if he has weed or whether it is time to change him. The reason for that is because he's got the wiener and most of the wee goes at the front, so most of the moisture is at the front of the nappy. So what that means is I would use my whole hand, the palm of my hand especially, and like squidge it. So I want to see whether it's squidgy, whether it's like a sponge, let's say, whether the consistency is full, in my opinion. So if you have trouble with this or you don't understand what I mean, I recommend you take one nappy that is all folded up with the inserts as usual, but it is dry, and take another one which is also like an ordinary nappy that you would usually use, but add some moisture to it. So then you can test between the two so that you can tell the difference between the two. It's just like an experiment, but at home and without the wee, but just use water. In terms of poo, and let's talk about the obvious here, usually you can tell by the smell. You can tell that they have pooed by the smell, but I have been there before where you can't tell by the smell, because I couldn't smell the fact that he's pooed and he's literally stayed in the poo a lot longer. So sometimes you can tell by the way they've ran into the corner, or the way they've put their face. Like sometimes they look kind of guilty, or like you can tell as a parent that actually they are going to poo or have pooed. However, if you don't realise that and you actually want to check it, I would suggest you can do that from the top of like their back. So basically go behind them, make a gap between the nappy and the back, and just have a look inside. Obviously you'll have to pull up the t-shirt or the overgrow, just to make sure that you've got that space in between to have a look inside. Sometimes you have to proper dig deep, especially if there's loads of layers, but it's worth it in the end, because it's not nice when they've been in that nappy, soiled nappy, for a long time and then they end up with a rash. So the other thing I was going to suggest is not only you can do it from the top, but you can also do it from the side. So you know the leg gussets of the reusable nappies, you can just pull them up or down rather slightly, or make another gap in between. Sometimes you would get that on your fingers, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but do be aware that if you stick your fingers in the middle, obviously if there's poo that's gone to the sides, then you would get that on your fingers as well. But it's a great way and an easy way to check that they have soiled themselves. All you have to do is wash your hands and off you go. So one of the 1,000 reasons why I love cloth nappies, and that is because why not take off the nappy and use a fresh one anyway. So if you are just not sure whether they've pooed, it's been, let's say, an hour or two already, you're just about trying to smell the poo, but you can't smell the poo, you can't quite see between the leg gussets or the back, just change them anyway. You don't have to feel guilty for having cloth nappies or for using a new one, because you're not throwing them away. You're just going to put it in the wash and going to reuse it again, right? So that's why I absolutely love using reusable nappies. Like, you just don't have to feel guilty each time you take one off. So let's say you've figured out that they have pooed into the nappy. What is the next step? Well, the next step is putting them into a safe environment where they can go nudie when you are changing them. So it's about taking that nappy off, getting rid of that soiled nappy, and making sure that their bot-bots are very much clean. As I said, especially when they're little, just make sure that their environments are all just free from them falling over or rolling into something that they shouldn't. So basically make sure that your baby can't roll into the poo. So when you are taking that nappy off, make sure that it's as far away as possible, that they can't kick their legs and their feet into it either, that they can't roll into it. But that reminds me, actually, so it's not only about the environment, so on the floor. Something that I found difficult as a pet owner is the fact that my dog absolutely loves licking up, eating the poo, and still does. So basically my toddler went on the potty, and the first time that he did so, I looked away, I looked back, and my dog has eaten the poo away. So it makes it easy for me to clean up, so I shouldn't be moaning, but at the same time just be aware that it's not very nice. It's quite disgusting, actually. So make sure that your pets are away from that vicinity where you are changing that nappy. When they're up and about, changing that nappy is a little bit more difficult. As I said, they're especially up on their feet a lot more. But something that my friend does, and that is keep screen time for changing nappies, and that is because that means that when he's watching the screen, he's more likely to keep still and lay there for her while she changes his nappy. So I thought that was a really good tip if you are struggling with doing it on the go. This might be a really great way to keep them occupied 5-10 minutes, just so that you can get them sorted whilst, yeah, basically they are occupied with something else. As you may know, if you've seen my previous videos, I don't like to use wet wipes because of the same reasons. They go into landfill, they don't actually biodegrade, unless you buy the biodegradable ones, but they cost a lot more. But essentially what I do is just use a muslin. So I bought about a dozen, I can't remember, maybe it was 10 muslins in a pack, and basically I've been using them for over 2 years, and yes, they're looking a little bit scruffy at the moment because we've loved them, reused them, used them for everything. So not only poos, but also spillages, any toys, and you name it, basically. Essentially I would recommend to wet one side, and I've shown this before in the past, especially when I went to places like Centre Parks. I would wet one side and keep one side dry, and that is because I'd use the wet side to clear off any soilage and make sure that there is no poo left on the bottom. I'll also show you how I do that in a second, but essentially I'd use the dry bit to just make sure that all the moisture is gone away, that their bottoms are as dry as possible. So when I said that I will show you how I do it, and basically there's a number of ways that you can do it, but it changes throughout your baby's growth and development. So when they're very young, I would usually pick like pick both of his feet up with the one hand and then use the other hand to wipe his bottom, so that I can get to all the nook and crannies of his bot and his skin, and basically just get there into the rim as well to make sure that it's as clean as possible. But now that he is potty training, I've got great footage to show you of where my son actually started putting his head either between like my thighs, or he's like putting him like his front side in front of me but his bottom up, so a little bit like a downward dog in the yoga position. I didn't teach him that, so I don't know who has. It could be nanny, it could be nursery, but he ended up just doing it, and it was so comfortable that I didn't want to discourage it, and I wanted to share with you guys because I'm able to see everything between his cheeks of his bottom to make sure that they're as clean as possible, and I thought I'd share that with you. Look guys, when it comes to poo, we know that it can smell, it can be a little bit disgusting, not all of us can actually manage it, and there's no reason why you can't protect yourself from that stuff. So what I mean by that is, firstly, you can wear a face mask just if the smell bothers you and you're trying to not to retch. Basically a face mask can really go a long way. But the other thing that I used to do all the time is just wear kitchen gloves, you know, like rubber gloves. I buy the disposable ones, and if you're interested I'll link down below the Amazon link for that. But essentially I'd use gloves because I know that it protects my hands from like cleaning it as well in hot water. I just found it easier to pick that up, like the dirty soiled nappy, and like rinse it in the sink first, or even use a wet bucket, which I've done before. So putting that dirty nappy in a bucket full of water with a little bit of like a washing powder, just to make sure that when it comes to actually washing it and putting it into the washing machine, it's already like quite moist, so it's so much easier to clean, and there's no stainage, there's no smells after that. So it's like a pre-wash in a way, where they're sitting there. I've got that lovely great bucket that I got from Amazon for reusable nappies specifically. So you put the cloth nappy in, and it's got a lid so that it doesn't smell like the whole place up, which is fantastic. But what I'm trying to say is basically use gloves if you don't want to get like the yucky stuff on your hands. There's no reason why you can't do like it. Just makes the experience so much quicker and so much less unpleasant. So I guess that takes me to the next step around like, what do you do with a nappy? So I've already mentioned a couple of things. So pre-rinsing is a great way, especially in those early days when the poos are so liquidy. Just put them into a bucket full of water, and that just means that it can like sit there, get like wash it off a little bit as well. Helps just the material not to dry with that soiledness, if that makes sense. So basically it just makes the washing machine process so much easier, because you just pop it into the washing machine. I would wash mine every 2 days. I've moved on to 3 days currently because we're just using so fewer reusable nappies now that we're potty training. But in like for like about 2 years, I'd say most of the 2 years, it was every 2 days that I would do the washing, just to make sure that we've got enough. Just depends what you've got in your reusable cloth nappy stash. If you wanted to see how you wash your cloth nappy, I did a whole video on like my washing routine, so definitely check that out. There's also some great comments on that video if you wanted to try out something new, if something isn't working for you. I definitely found that if you do like the whole soaking process first before you put it into the washing machine, really helps. But something that you guys have commented and mentioned to me before is the fact that you do like a pre-wash in your washing machine so that it washes, and then you do another wash, like a normal wash, so that you can actually wash it in clean water, and that way you found that the cloth nappies are a lot cleaner. So definitely check it out, try it for yourself, see if that works for you. Before I move on, I wanted to share a quick trick with you around how to actually clean the nappy. So something that I've learned is actually taking the nappy or the liner. So let's start with liners. I have used bamboo liners most of the time that I've used cloth nappies, and they're absolutely great to help prevent stainage on your nappy, but also to keep the moisture away from your baby's skin. And like, I absolutely love them and recommend them. I do find the poo process a lot easier with Alina as well, even if it's a reusable one, and I'll go through my tip that I was just going to mention. But when it comes to like the bamboo liners, just make sure that you don't flush them, because they're not flushable. I would put them into a biodegradable poo bag. These poo bags we actually use for our dog, so dog poo. However, I found them absolutely perfect for bamboo liners as well, because it all biodegrades and I don't have to worry about that whole global climate side of things. So to go back to my tip, and especially when it comes to reusable liners, or if you don't use liners at all, a great trick is actually using the flush of the toilet. So as the toilet flushes, I would use like the power of the water coming down to rinse as much poo as possible. So that is something to keep in mind. Yes, when they're liquid poos, you can just put them into the bucket and just like let that do the hard work, but as they get more solid, you can definitely pop them into the toilet. Use the flush to help you actually rinse as much as possible. So that's where the gloves also come in handy, because you don't actually want to feel the water on your hands, or I personally didn't, so I'd wear gloves as I was holding it underneath that flush. Once that's done, you pop it into the washing machine. The washing machine does the hard work. You put it up to dry or put it into a tumble dryer. I personally haven't tried too many tumble dryer options. I've tried it once or twice, and it was actually my relative's family's place, which you can check out the video. I'll make sure to link that for you guys. But basically, I feel like I am forgetting something, and I usually do. Each time I finish these videos, I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned this. So don't worry, I will be back with another video. As I've mentioned, the next video that I will do around these series specifically is going to be around out and about, how to actually change like your baby with reusable nappies, how it works, what kind of stuff you need as well, just to make your lives a lot easier. However, as you know, I am a busy gal. I've got plenty of stuff to do around the house. Probably the next video will be another makeover or decoration one, because we've moved into this new house and have so much to do. But I also have some great series around mum stuff coming up as well, so I can't wait to share those with you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am so pleased that you are finding these helpful and that you guys are watching and recommending other stuff. Really pleased to have you here, so thank you so much. Until next time, bye.